It's the RJ Ochoa Show on 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star. What's going on in Jerry's world? What's the latest from Cowboy Camp? Find out right here. Friday mornings at 7:30 and 9:30 with the manager and editor-in-chief of Blogging the Boys, RJ Ochoa. Here's Robin Rudy.
It's R&R wrapped around at RJ. This is the R&R intro portion to the RJ Ochoa Show. He's Rudy J. I'm Rob Thompson. We're in maroon. I can't tell what color RJ's in. Why are you in the dark, RJ? Welcome on.
It's great. It's great to be with you guys. Happy Friday. I'm a little under the weather, if that isn't obvious. And so, I'm kind of like a vampire right now. You know what I mean? That's how you want the house. You're not feeling well. Like, everything's just got to kind of match your internal tone. But the good news is I sound sexy. Like Phoebe.
You do. You got a little
with my voice like this. Yeah.
Now
so,
the good thing is
pros and cons.
The good thing is I'm almost positive, because I know everyone here is dealing with it too. I think it's more severe allergies. Don't mean you feel better, but it isn't, the flu or anything. But I think it may be severe allergies. I don't know what the hell's floating, but it's bad.
It's tough times, but we got to power through.
Has it spread around the Ochoa household? Are you the only one ill? Have you?
It has.
Yeah.
And they don't tell you that when you're a kid and you're like, I'm sick, and you can do whatever you want. They don't tell you, like, hey, when you're an adult and you're the head of the household and everyone is sick, you have to still
got to do everything.
Responsibilities, and everyone who depends on you needs their stuff. And if you get a new puppy before, she's still gonna piss on the floor. So all that stuff is still going on, still making my life.
Adulting sucks, my friend. It's also quite beneficial when you see the little one. How's the puppy doing, by the way, before we talk some Trey Lance?
She's actually really great. We originally were going to call her Lady Bear. We've decided to call her Honey. So we've got Bear and Honey. Thinking about renaming our house to the 1,000 Acre Woods. And she's sleeping through the night, which is really the biggest thing that I care about, because her poops are so small. They're like, you can poop 10 times in the house, and it's really not going to affect us that much.
No. Those are just little pebbles. You good.
But those grow.
Exactly.
Fix that early.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So this has been an interesting week for our Dallas Cowboys. And I really don't even know where to begin, because I'm not even sure how big a story this is. But the Trey Lance move kind of tilted the scale on a lot of different fronts. The Mike McCarthy situation, where Dak Prescott is as quarterback, and then just the idea of maybe the quarterback of the future already in the building. With underneath this grand umbrella of the story, what do you make of Trey Lance arriving, the draft pick that went out, the McCarthy unaware, and the Dak being unaware, and all that kind of goes into this mix?
So first, let me offer, I'm going to trust Rudy. My apologies to Rudy. I did not remember. Maybe the sickness was already infiltrating my mind last Friday when this happened. And I really did not remember Rudy. And also, when Rudy texted me about this, my phone was being attacked
you were
by
getting
everybody
killed.
in the world.
Yeah, I could imagine.
So it was very difficult to compartmentalize everything. I will agree, Rob, this has been a really unique thing. And my initial reaction was one of sensitivity for Dak Prescott, because I was immediately pre-annoyed. I was pre-annoyed at what all of this week's national headlines would be, and I'm glad to say that I forecasted that completely correctly. But the weird thing about this that a lot of people don't want to accept is that this is so often in the NFL you can look at a situation and you can look at how timelines are all moving in one direction, whether it's towards a rebuild or this or that or whatever. These timelines match whatsoever. And that's why, the idea that Trey Lance is the quarterback of the future is absurd. Even if you're the biggest Dak Prescott critic in the world, Dak's cap number next year is just south of $60 million. That has to be extended. I mean, there's no way the Cowboys carry that into 2024. At the same time, in the offseason, they're going to have to figure out whether they want to pick up Trey Lance's 50 option or not. And there's no way that they're going to tie themselves up in that much quarterback money, even if Trey Lance shows all the wonder in the world about practices this entire season. And so, in all likelihood, they're heading into next year with Trey Lance in a contract year and Dak Prescott sweet extension that ties into the Cowboys for what will then be, the next 3 to 4 years.
Well, then why do it, RJ? Like, because I mean, I disagree with
That's
you.
a fair question.
I think there's I don't know how big a percentage, but I do think there's a small percentage of Jerry that feels like this could be the future. But where you break it down makes total sense. So that's why I ask you, then why do it?
I mean, that's a great question. And I guess if you have to answer it, the answer is that this is a league where quarterbacks are the hottest ticket in town. You can never have enough, even when you have, one. And if you trade for Trey Lance and he turns out to be great and you can flip him for something, awesome. If he turns out to be great and you really think he's better than Dak Prescott, okay, that's a difficult problem to solve, but you can do it. I mean, for what it's worth, again, if we're exploring all tentacles of this situation, the Philadelphia Eagles took on the biggest dead cap hit in NFL history from trading Carson Wentz because they felt like they had to move on. They felt like they had an answer worth exploring in Jalen Hurts in that 2021 season. And obviously that worked out great for the Eagles, but they did have to eat that money. So it's not uncommon that to happen. It happened relatively recently, obviously. But if you're playing the game of all likelihood, it's that nothing really materializes from this. But again, I think the why is, why not? Why not take a stab at this? We know Mike McCarthy historically loves to have a quarterback to develop. They got one for a really cheap price who is far better than anybody they would have drafted this year. It's just a weird thing that creates some weird discussion.
This timing was so odd, and I understand that you couldn't fix the timing. The timing was what it was, but the situation just kind of exploded in everybody's face, it felt like.
Yeah, and I will say I don't think there's any. I'm not, as a fan or anything, bothered by Mike McCarthy not being told, by Dak Prescott not being told, because at the end of the day, this decision shouldn't involve them, right? I mean, it's fine if you want to, but this is a roster management decision. This isn't to do with the offensive scheme. This isn't to do with the offensive implementation. Those are the facts of football that Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott have their hands over. I mean, it's no different in my mind than the Cowboys not consulting them on who they should take in the first round. There are different responsibilities here. But that being said, vocalizing that you didn't tell them is an interesting choice, to say the least. That's the little bit of pot stirring that it felt like happened here. That's what made all this really annoying. But again, I don't think you have to tell them because you should be that simpatico. I mean, it's understood that Mike McCarthy likes to have a quarterback to develop. And the Cowboys, for what it's worth, have only drafted 2 quarterbacks in the Dak Prescott era. They took Mike White in the 5th round in 2018 and Ben DiNucci in the 7th round in 2020. And so I know everybody made a big deal about Dak's comments last Saturday night. I think by now it's well understood that he was probably more upset on behalf of Will Greer than anything. But I mean, if on the remote possibility Dak is in his feelings, which I don't think to be the case personally, if he is, dude, chill out, because this idea is what, and this position is what led to you having your job. If the Cowboys hadn't been forward thinking in 2016 and taken a stab with a 4th round pick in the exact same way, I mean, they would have been up a creek with a quarterback that season, and your career would have never unfolded the way that it did. Again, I don't think Dak's upset, but this is the game. I mean, and everybody has to play their way, and the front office just did their part.
Now, do you think when Dak called him to console him after Trey broke his ankle that he had any idea he'd end up on the Cowboys roster?
Probably not. But I mean, that's the way.
That's how Dak is, right? That's who he really is, right? So do you think, so do you think he's going to take on I got to handle my business, but I'll still take you under my wing and teach you all I can? Or will he take the approach of, dude, I'm not going to help you become my replacement?
I think I've said before that if you're a Cowboys fan, and Rudy, I know that's a battle you wrestle with internally.
I did, yes, big time.
But if you're a Cowboys fan, Dak Prescott is a dream of a player to root for. Like, he is that Disney dude who does the right thing and says the right thing and, looks epic when he's running out of the tunnel. Like, he checks all those boxes. And I do believe him to be that guy who will help Trey Lance in his development in the name of bettering the team. There was a lot of chatter floating around this past week about how Tony Romo did that with Dak Prescott. I'm not here to besmirch the name of Tony Romo that I love very much, but that was not the case.
No, it wasn't.
Romo did not do that.
No.
Mark Sanchez was the only dude helping Dak Prescott out when he was a rookie in 2016. And, I think on a human level, how can you blame Romo? I mean, it was a difficult thing to accept. And so I don't blame anyone for not doing that.
Yeah. Again, on an interesting sidebar, have you noticed on Hard Knocks how far they have gone to point out how giving Aaron Rodgers has been to young Zach? he's taking him under his wing. He's calling touchdown plays for him. He's coaching him up. He's doing all this stuff. I think there's been a concerted effort to kind of rehab Aaron Rodgers' reputation that he garnered with Jordan Love. Although I'm not sure that was true back then with Love either. I don't know if he shut him down or didn't mentor him at all. But he's certainly been a mentor to Zach.
I buy that to be legitimate with Rodgers.
Oh, I do.
I think but I think I mentioned Phoebe from Friends and her sexy. She's also the subject of a great plot line in one episode of Friends, where Joey tells her there's no selfless good deed, right? Like you can't do any good deed without some sense of selfishness, because at the very least you feel good about doing it. So there's selfishness associated with any good deed you want to do. I think there's some
it's a very existentialist view.
Right. And Aaron Rodgers is an existentialist kind of person. And I think, unfortunately for Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers Corp, what he's doing has been done before, right? Like the older Hall of Famer who finds a new team, who goes on to have success and even win the Super Bowl with them. Peyton Manning did it. Tom Brady did it. So you can do anything new, Aaron. How can you make this new? Well, you can have the success. You can win the Super Bowl, and you can train the young Padawan. And you can leave the organization, because what has happened to the Broncos and the Patriots and now the Bucks since Peyton Manning and Tom Brady walked away? They've been in purgatory. But Aaron Rodgers can be known as the guy who came in and like think about how lame it was to call it. Well, think about how lame it was to call it Jet Life Stadium. Like that's the most like low hanging fruit comment of all time. Like Aaron Rodgers is like screaming JES. It's like, dude, quit being such a hardo. We get it. You want people to think you're into this right now. So I'm not saying it's disingenuous, but I am saying that there's a bit of selfishness.
One last question before we move on to the team itself. There was an opportunity cost to going and getting it, a 4th-round pick. That 4th-round pick could have been used if you had a 4th-round pick to move. I mean, legit. And we didn't know we did until he made the deal. Wouldn't a 4th-round pick been more appropriately used on something that could be usable right now, like maybe an offensive lineman?
Maybe. But I mean, the opportunity cost in this case isn't, tremendous. I would offer. And now, for what it's worth, the Cowboys don't have a 6th-round pick next year. They've already traded that as well when they moved up to get Aaron Scott Jr. So they're down those 2, but they're slated to get their usual run of compensatory picks, and that's where and how they feel safe, because they know we can burn these, get a couple down the road. We can always move around. We can always dance around, and we could pick that up. We could recoup, whatever the case may be. So. Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a day 3 pick. I know it sounds cool because it's a 4th-round pick, but it's a day 3 pick. Like, if you're not picking on Thursday or Friday night, nobody really cares.
I saw that the Ravens, it was for other reasons, but I saw the Ravens are holding 4 QBs. And Rob and I had an interesting back and forth, and Rob kind of wanted to hold 4 QBs. Nitpick the 53. Because the thing about you, RJ, you are a fan, but you give it to them straight. What would you nitpick about the final 53?
I think it's worth mentioning, and this still has to do with the Trey Lance trade. The new rule, it's a new old rule, but involving the 3rd quarterback on the team. So if you have a 3rd quarterback on your 53, he can technically be this ghost player that is a part of your 46-man active game day roster without counting against that.
Right.
And he can dress. And if you're in an emergency where your top 2 go down, you can have that do go in. Ironically, that came as a result of Trey Lance's former team. So, I mean, I would challenge you to find a QB3 that you feel better about than Trey Lance. It would be very difficult. But to Rob's point, I mean, afford them. Well, I mean, Rob,
I'm just saying.
Thank you.
Remember it, but I mean, let's be cool. It was the final night before everyone went to pledge. You know what I mean? It was whatever. Anyway,
wow.
But yeah. So I mean, I'm not opposed to hoarding them like Baltimore's doing. That's a little bit more unique. But as far as critiquing the 53, I wish they'd gone a little bit deeper at offensive line. Yeah, is that born out of fear? Definitely.
Yes.
Are they weirdly going about linebacker only keeping 3? Yes, but that's a little bit more common, it feels like. And, the day and age of your kind of classic off-ball linebacker is over. In fact, the Cowboys defense is really positionless. There's no, real D tackles, D ends. There are 2 groups that defenders fall in for the Cowboys. There's pass rushers and there's players who drop back. That's it. And Dan Quinn has so many athletes that he can utilize them in a number of different ways, as evidenced by the way he uses safeties in the box and things like that. I mean, I don't mean to be the like Kool-Aid drinking, this really feels like the year Cowboys guy, but I have very few qualms with how they handled it. Would it have been cool if they had carried Isaiah Land and not seen him get poached by the Indianapolis Colts? Yeah, but
I
you know
was
what?
shocked that
Give her the
Land.
benefit
I
of the
was
doubt.
shocked they let Land walk. I really was. That was like one of the first couple of things I talked about with a couple of buddies of mine.
The reality is, I mean, where's he getting snaps this year? You know, and that sucks. Like, you know, if you're good at this, it should be hard. If you're good at this, you should agonize over that 53rd decision. And so it's quite possible Land was number 54. And sometimes, you know, you're just number 54. And I'm glad he has another opportunity, but it would have been great, obviously, had the Cowboys been able to get him back on the practice squad.
I know you talked just a little about the offensive line, and if there is one qualm that I have, it's that we know that they're going to get hurt, that two of these guys are going to miss games. It's just the numbers tell us, and
So
it's been
negative.
that. Well, we have to at some point address the fact that your offensive line is going to be a point of pain, and they did not, at least to this point, address a depth issue other than through their draft. And I know they rely and are comfortable with their drafting alignment, but I'm not comfortable here. I do think that this is going to get them.
So I agree with you, and not that this is a defense, but that's sort of a problem across the entire
True.
NFL. You know what I mean? Like right now, the three of us, we're going to buy a house, and we're like, man, this is expensive. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like this house is really expensive. It's like, yeah, dude, like welcome to the world. Now, if you are trying to give them credit, they did sign Chuma Edoga in free agency. They did draft Awesome Richards with a 4th-round pick. They did sign TJ Bass as an undrafted free agent. All of them made the team. I mean, so they did add by multiple avenues this offseason. Again, if you're really trying, last year I thought that they went about things really foolishly. I mean, they went about operating as if Tyron was never going to miss time. I do think that as a result of it, at least, they have to have a contingency plan in place, but it doesn't feel as foolish as it did a year ago. Again, I don't feel great about it, but I would also challenge you to find the team in the NFL that feels wonderful about their 8th or 9th offensive line.
Because of the chemistry Dak and Schultz had, and then now where we see the tight end money is gone, RJ.
Really?
Oh, man.
Do you think, I mean, maybe Schultz could have stuck around for 10 to 12? I mean, we're at 17 now. I mean, Dak loved him some Schultz. And I'm not saying that Ferg can't be the guy, RJ. I'm just saying, like, now where we see the numbers, Schultz wasn't too bad at 10 to 12.
Well, you said 10 to 12. He got 9 from the.
Oh, that's right.
So why are you going to pay him more than Houston?
You're right about that.
I mean, that's the reality, is that it is just, you know, people turn this into memes and things like running backs don't matter, whatever. Unless you are Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and that's really it. Like, I think we're all fascinated by Kyle Pitts. Darren Waller has had a moment in the sun.
He got paid
Jonnu
too.
Smith had a moment in the sun. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, unless you're one of those dudes, it's just not worth paying that position. And Dak has shown that he can make, I don't want to say anyone who plays it productive, but just about anything close to that. And so you don't have to waste that money. And again, let's not act like Dak and Dalton played a lot together. I mean, Dalton really took off in 2020 when Dak got hurt. I mean, they really kind of had just that 2021 season all the way through together. And that was what led to Dalton getting the tag that he played on last year.
Gotcha.
That's RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys. Make sure you're following him and checking Blogging the Boys on the daily. If you call yourself a Cowboys fan, you're probably already there. And Cowboys fans today are going through the loss of one of the architects, Gil Brandt, passing away yesterday. I think it hit a lot of people in a very unique way. He was kind of like grandpa.
I learned it from you, RJ. I had just in the break, I went onto your Instagram and I learned that from you. What did y'all write about Gil?
I mean, it's, you know, in situations like this, it's tough to really say anything. I mean, because his career kind of spoke for itself. If, you know, if anyone is, I would even offer under the age of 50, they might not be fully aware of Gil Brandt's contributions to the Cowboys brand. I mean, at the beginning, it was Tex Schramm, it was Tom Landry, and it was Gil Brandt. And they all innovated in their own special ways. Tom Landry, obviously, in the most visible on the field. Tex Schramm, literally in the most visible by way of television marketing and public relations. I mean, it's Tex Schramm's contributions that lead to the Cowboys being on Thanksgiving every year, playing on Thanksgiving. But Gil Brandt innovated in the scouting department. I mean, he was the first dude to be like, let's use computers, right? Like let's let the computers kind of process this information. And it led to the discovery of so many Hall of Fame players, Ring of Honor players, important contributors. I mean, he revolutionized the part of the reason the NFL draft is what it is today is because of Gil Brandt. And he helped identify that as this resource that needed to be completely and totally, dried up. You were interested in improving your football team. And so he truly is one of the most important and influential people in NFL history. He's rightfully in the Ring of Honor and the Hall of Fame. And, I think he's an example of, I saw this conversation floating around yesterday, like, I think we all have a bit of an internal peace that he was able to see himself go into the Hall of Fame. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen for everybody. And it brings up the Jimmy Johnson Ring of Honor stuff. Dude, time is so precious. Like there's no reason to not let people like this, enjoy their moment in the sun that they deserved. And hopefully Gil Brandt got to experience his.
This is more of an NFL question, but it involves the Cowboys, RJ. Rob and I discussed a little bit earlier the Forbes valuations. And is it time we get back, especially because of the NFL and how big they are and how much money they make, to where we just go back to no salary cap and then we're not even having to deal with these things? Or is it still a necessary evil in your eyes?
I mean, I'm always pro player. So I would love to see the players get, everything that they possibly could. But I will say there's just zero way that the NFL ever allows that because their cap is a fraction of their overall net earnings in a given year. And the cap is a built-in excuse. Hey, man, we tried. We can't. I mean, we're up against the salary cap. It works some way. Nobody understands. We're over. We're under. But we're going to be over. We had to leave money to sign our rookies or whatever the case may be. So there's no way they get rid of that. It protects them in a lot of different ways. The owners, that is, and this is an owners league, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it's stupid, the evaluation. I always think about, I don't know if either of you saw that movie Concussion.
Yes.
There was a line in the trailer for that movie that I always think about. And it was when somebody's playing Will Smith's character, like to be careful challenging the NFL. And again, it was so powerful. They said, you're going up against somebody that owns a day of the week.
Yeah.
And that's who they are.
Strong.
Like they really and totally, absolutely do. It's their world. I mean, it's crazy that they're more valued than some Premier League teams or La Liga teams. Like they're not a worldwide league, yet they have worldwide fame and fortune.
That's RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys. We're about to close out the segment. Before we go, this news crossing board that we do have another shift in the college football land, that Stanford and Cal and SMU are joining the ACC.
Oh, really?
It appears that at this phone meeting
did they get to vote?
There were 4 possible votes no. They had to carry 12 of the 15. They needed to flip one. Evidently, they did.
SMU too.
SMU, Cal, and Berkeley or Stanford are headed to the ACC.
Thoughts and prayers to Oregon State. Tough team. Tough morning to be a Beaver. I mean,
tough morning to be a Beaver. Save that, Edwin.
That's really I don't I don't live and die with some of the college football pageantry and traditions as much as a lot of people. My internal focus just has to exist on Sundays, obviously, throughout the fall. But I'm at the very least interested. I'm not saying I am a fan of this or I'm enjoying this, but we're at this point now where let's see it. Like I'm ready to say, let's see what this looks like. Let's see, Oregon travel to, Happy Valley on a Saturday night. Let's get weird. Like at this point, I feel for the athletes. I feel for everybody involved. I can't believe, again, college football is this massively popular thing, but from a wealth standpoint, it's worth, again, a fraction of the NFL. But it's so difficult to explain this to people. It's like I'm sure people hit you up in your daily lives, when y'all are out doing your own personal errands, going where you like to go, Rudy. We all know those places. And people are like, okay, so what's going on in college football? Why? Why did Oregon State get left out? It's the most difficult concept in the world to explain.
What are you going to do this last week before this, before you lock all the way in for these next 17 weeks? You got any plans with the family? Because these next 17 weeks, how it's going to be.
18 weeks for the regular season.
18, you're right, because of the bye.
More beyond that. this point, just rest and recuperate and get healthy.
You
That's
sound
our
like Mike
primary goal.
McCarthy. You sound like Mike
but,
McCarthy. What the
Just came home from camp.
Yeah, but it is, it's exciting. And truthfully, I mean, for me, I really enjoy the scheduled kind of action that my life becomes. Like, it's so easy to kind of identify this always happens on Mondays, this always happens on Thursdays, whatever. And it's fun having football back. I did not stay up for the Arizona State game last night. If either of you did, kudos, especially given what you do for a living. But it's fun having that, that option back in our lives. So I'm pumped about it.
He's RJ Ochoa.
My
Check
man.
his stuff at Blogging the Boys, following him on the X's and the Instas and everything else that you keep up with for the outside world. But all in all, get well, RJ. We can't wait to talk to you next week.
Before next week, y'all have a glass of chocolate milk.
Giggle.
That will be the first time in quite some time. RJ Ochoa.